Welcome to the 38th webinar from Spark. This session is part of a series of free webinars offered every week or two by the Stark Portage Area Computer Consortium, or SPARC for short. SPARC is an information technology center in Northeast Ohio where we support about 30 school districts. However, this webinar is open to everyone, and we would like to welcome all the people who have joined us live today or are watching the recording in the future. My name is Anthony Luskery, and I'm the Technology Integration Specialist at Spark, and I will be your presenter for today's session. My colleague Eric Kurtz will be manning the question and answer document, which we'll get to in a moment. All the information for today's webinar can be found at the shortened URL tiny.cc/Spark, SPARCC 239. Again, that information is at tiny.cc/SPARCC 239. And I would encourage you to go to that site if you have not already done so. That link will take you out to our technology integration site where you can find all the resources for today's session, including the live video stream, which will become the recorded video stream after this session, a help guide, a live session chat document where you can ask questions, and a session evaluation. Also, at the very end, you will find a quiz that you can take to earn a certificate of attendance for one contact hour through the Stark County ESC. And again, that's if you pass the quiz at the very end. While you're at our site, you may also want to take a look at some of the upcoming events. So I will go over right now to our professional development page, and you'll see our professional development schedule and our listing of upcoming webinars. And if we go back to our homepage, ti.apps.sparcc.org, you will see we have a calendar that we keep track of events occurring mostly in Northeast Ohio, but around the state and sometimes around the country. And then below that, we have some information on our conference and our bootcamp, which is already over. But one thing that you may want to take a look at while you're on this page is to subscribe to the Spark Lines newsletter. This newsletter comes out about once a month. We will not spam you. It's just a great way to keep in touch with what we're presenting, both as recorded webinars and possibly live in your area. And finally, if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find our contact information under the contact menu link or at the bottom of the first page. Okay, back to today's presentation. Today's presentation is going to focus on trying to get your email inbox in some kind of order. And I know if you're anything like me, your email comes in very fast and furious, and sometimes it gets a little confusing to find it. So we're going to go into our session here, and we're going to take a look at my information. Now we're going to be using a couple of different accounts today. I'll be switching between them. One is a test account and one is a real account, just to give you an idea of what it looks like when we've gone through and done all the filtering and other items. After we're done going through the filtering, we'll also talk about a few settings that you might find beneficial to change to make your email life a little more organized and a little more effective. So if you've ever had an important incoming email and you've missed it, which I've done many times, I'm trying to get better. We all are. There's some special tools that you can use to make it a little easier to find those emails and also to label the emails so that you can find them in the future. Now, the first thing that we're going to be concentrating on is finding emails. And the way we do that is with this little neat search bar that's at the very top above our email. So I've logged into my account. If you want to follow along, you can jump into any type of Google Apps account, a Gmail account, etc. And I just went into the email section of it. And from there, I can see on my page a little search bar at the top. There's also a little drop-down menu on the side here. If we click on that, it'll open the full search bar. Box. Now, the first thing I have to tell you about is probably the most important thing today, and that is when we want to search through all of our email, you would think that we'd want to choose this nice little button that says All Mail. Well, unfortunately, that is not all of our email. To truly get all of our email, we need to click on the little drop down and go down to where it says Mail and Spam and Trash. And that will show us all of our email, especially those ones we missed because they went into our spam folder, those ones we accidentally threw into the trash. So again, if you want to find all your email, all mail does not really work. You need to go to mail, spam, and trash. From this box, we have a variety of ways we can search using the tools that are here. We can search who the message is from. We can search who the message is to, the subject line. We can look for words in the email or in the subject both, or we can look for things that do not have specific words. We can look for things that have attachments. We can look for things that do not include chats. We can also choose how large the email is to take a look and see whether we can find that email. And one tool that I think is very effective, when someone says, I sent you that email last Thursday, you can actually go in and set a range that you want to look at and then put in specific dates. So if I wanted to look at everything within 3 days of last Christmas, I could just simply jump back to December, and I could click on Christmas Day here, and it would show me all my emails that were 3 days before and 3 days after. So basically 6 days of email would be available to me if I did that search. Now I know this account doesn't go back that far, so I'm going to jump forward a little bit, and I think there probably is some email around June. So I'm going to say I want to go June 15th, and we're going to increase it to 2 months, and we'll say search, and it'll find all the emails that meet that criteria. So you see these emails in August fall within that time frame. The other thing you can do with the search bar is if you're really good with the syntax that you use searching in Google, some of the variety of operators, you can add those. So you're not just limited to the operators that you see on the little drop-down menu. You can actually add additional operators to it. So for example, if you wanted to see whether it had been read before and you know the operator for that, you can simply put in that and then say that you want to see all the messages that have been read versus all the emails that have not been read. So again, you have complete control up here if you're really good with the various syntax of the email, of the Google searching tools. But for right now, we're going to rely more on the built-in tools as opposed to going out and finding them. Now, one of the things we can do is we can look for an email based on when it was, who it was sent from. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to search for an email, and I'm going to look for an email from Boot 900. We'll see if Boot 900 has sent us any emails. And we search, you'll see that all these emails have came from Boot 900. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see them a little bit better. You notice we have a lot of them here. And you notice they do have a label on them already, labeled inbox. And we'll talk more about the labels in a minute. But these are all emails that have came from Boot 900. If I click on one, you'll see that the address up here is Boot 900. So I'm going to come up here and clear my box again, and we're going to go and do some more searches. So let me just clear the whole thing out of here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the equals, and we'll see all of our email again. Or you can simply go back over and click on your inbox and see all of your email again. So now we can see all of our email, and we can start working on something called filtering. Now, filtering is a very powerful tool that lets you take emails that are coming in, set a criteria for those emails, and then apply some action to them. So the easiest way probably to do that is by choosing an email that matches the pattern you want to filter for. So let's say I'm interested in Atlas Obscura, which is a pretty neat site out there. It's a website, and I'm subscribed to the daily newsletter, and I want to see this filtered so I can find it very easily. So I'm just going to click on this message, open it up. There's the message. Very bizarre things on Atlas Obscura. This is the June 19th edition, but there's lots of great things there if you want to keep them and find them. So what I can simply do is, while I have this message open, I can go up to the More button, click on the More button, and you'll notice that down near the bottom, there's this label that says Filter Messages Like These. When I click on that, it assumes that I want to search for a certain criteria. So what it basically looked for is it looked for this Boot 900. Now that's probably not going to do it for us, so I'm going to go ahead and take this out. I'm going to put in Atlas Obscura. And again, you can choose what you want to sort by, or you can let it try and find what you want. We could actually add more criteria if we want to. This should be enough for us. We're going to hit the test search button. And what it should do is it should find us a number of these sites. And of course, here we go. We have all of these available to us. So when we want to create our filter, we now have the ability to do this with the Atlas Obscura. So once we know that the search is working, we can use the little blue menu at the bottom that says create a filter with this search. When we do this, it'll bring up a second screen. So again, before we leave the screen, you can use any of these criteria or any criteria that you might want to enter in the search bar. So I'm going to click on the create filter with this search, and you'll notice now it comes over and it says, okay, we're looking for Atlas Obscura. We're going to find all the messages that are there. What would you like us to do with it? And you're going to notice that the list is almost endless. There are so many things you can do with it. First thing we do is we can skip the inbox and have it go directly into archive so we don't have to see it, but we still keep it. We can mark it as read if we'd like to. We can put a star on it, and when we put a star on it, we will only be able to put one color star. So if you use multiple color stars, unfortunately, it's going to be a yellow star. But we'll talk more about changing stars and colors a little later. We can also do some labels, which we'll get back to. We're going to skip over that for a moment. We can forward it to someone if we'd like to. Before we can forward it to someone, we have to set up a forwarding address ahead of time. So we'd have to use this little blue menu item over here to set up a forwarding address. And we'll go through forwarding probably a little bit later when we go through some of the settings. But just to give you an idea, if you want to forward email to someone, you have to first send an email to that email address. They will get a verification code, which you then provide back to you so that you can put it in. Without that verification code, Gmail will not allow you to forward to an address without a code, so that you just can't force email down someone else's inbox without their choice. We can also choose to delete it. So if you have someone that writes you emails all the time that you really don't want to deal with, you can simply add them as a filter, click on the delete button. Anytime anything comes in, it'll automatically be deleted. We can also put in never send to spam. So if you have an email that's coming to you quite often, and maybe there's a word in it like giant sale or clearance or whatever might be in there, you can say, I never want to send it to spam. Now be careful of that, because if you say never send it to spam, anything that meets that criteria will not be sent to spam. We can also send a canned response. We have to create the canned responses ahead of time, but we can have some canned responses that I played around with a little earlier. So there's fun and door 9 in there, which mean absolutely nothing, but we can make this very formal. So we could have it anytime we get a message that comes in that says, I don't know, Anthony, can you please fix something? I could have a message in here saying, please use the help system and I will be happy to fix your problem. We can always mark it as important. I would suggest for your main supervisor, maybe your principal, your superintendent, your treasurer, whoever pays for you to work, you may want to mark it as important for your important colleagues, etc. We can also choose to categorize it if we're using the category email system for our inbox. And again, there's a variety of email systems. You may not be using categories. If you are, though, you can choose to have something go into a specific category. Now, I said we're going to skip over the most important one, and that is apply a label. So we're going to click on this, and we're going to want to apply a label to this, and we need to choose which label we want to apply. Now, if we go in here, it says SP. Well, that's not the label I want. So I can come in here and I can actually create a new label on the fly for exactly what I want. So I'm going to click on new label, and I'm going to type in Atlas Obscura. If I wanted to, I could nest this label under a different label, but for right now, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to simply create a new label. And I'll talk more about what labels are after we create one. So I'm going to click on the Create button, and it says it's going to apply the label Create, and then it gives me one last thing before I click Create the filter. It says, hey, I found 35 other matching conversations. Do you want to do the same thing with these? In other words, it lets you retroactively filter and work with the document, an email that's came in previously. So I'm going to say yes, I want to do it to all 35 pre-existing ones. It'll then do it with all future incoming emails the same way. When I click on the Create Filter button, the filter will be created, and magically, if we go back to our inbox, we will find out that anything from Atlas Obscura will have an Atlas Obscura label on it. So you notice right here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the How To Geek, has an Atlas Obscura label on it. Now, what we need to talk about for a moment is what are labels? On the side here, under our inbox, you notice we have some things listed, and you notice right now we have an Atlas Obscura. So obviously, we have just created a label on this side. Now, in many of the other email systems you might use, such as Outlook or Thunderbird or Yahoo Mail, most of them have what are called folders. And folders are sort of neat because you can drag an email in there into the folder and you can drop it, or you can look in the folder and see what's in there. You can put subfolders inside of folders and save your email that way. The difference with Google is they call them labels. And the reason why they call them labels becomes a little more obvious when we talk about one of the traits you can do with these labels. So you can think of them as folders as you want, but they're sort of like folders on steroids because they can do a couple things that folders cannot do. For example, if we drag an email into a folder, we can only drag it into one folder. But with labels, we can choose to apply multiple labels to the same email. So you say, how does that work? Well, if I would look in Atlas Obscura, I would see everything that had an Atlas Obscura label on it. If I would look in SP, I would see everything that has an SP label on it. So we can have as many labels as we'd like. I don't know if there's a limit. I've never put more than 10 on myself, but I know that you can put up to 10 labels on an email before it complains. If someone wants to try and find what the limit is, please let me know, because I'm not sure what the upper limit is, but I know that there's no problem putting 5 to 10 labels on something if you'd like. Matter of fact, by default, every email that arrives in your inbox has a label attached to it, but we can't see it right now, and that's the inbox label. And that's one of the peculiarities about the labels that take a little bit of time to get used to. When you're in a label, you will not see the label show up on the email because it says, hey, you're in the inbox. So all these obviously have the inbox label on them. Same thing if we click on the Atlas Obscura, you'll notice that they all have the inbox on them because that's one of the labels that's still attached. They're still in our inbox. But it doesn't have an Atlas Obscura label on it because it is actually the folder, the label that we just clicked on the side here. So again, when we click on the label, they will not show up on the items that are in the label or under that label or labeled with that label. That's sort of redundant. So again, if we go back to our inbox, you'll see that we have some labels on a variety of things. Here's Atlas Obscura. Now, you might say, well, that's kind of boring. You know, that's gray. I wish I could tell the difference between these two. There's this Atlas Obscura, this SP, and the inbox, and they all look the same. So how can we change our labels to make them a little more exciting, a little bit easier to organize, a little easier to catch when they come in? Well, the trick is, after we create the label, if we move our mouse just to the right of the label, you'll see a little drop-down arrow, and we click on that, it opens a drop-down menu. This drop-down menu has a couple things on it. The first couple things down at the bottom here, we can choose to show things all the time, show them only if the message is unread, or we can hide them completely and not see anything under that label. So if we have this set as unread, we will see all of our messages that are unread. But if all the messages in the folder have been read, the label basically disappears temporarily from the side here, so you would not see it. If you want to hide it completely, you can simply use the hide button. We can also do some other things with it. We can remove the label, etc. But what we want to do right now is we want to create a color for our label. So if we click on label color, it gives us a choice of a variety of colors, both the background color and the text color. Now, there's a big number here. Looks like there's like maybe 16 or 20 or something like that. But if that's not enough, you can simply click on the Add a Custom Color. And when you do that, it lets you choose what you want for the background color and what you want for the text color. So we could do this, kind of hard to read, or we could do this, a little easier to read. Maybe that might even be better. So we can choose any combination we want. If we want pink and we want purple writing on it, we can do that. So we have the flexibility of many different choices. So I'm going to choose this gold, and I'm going to choose the black background here. When I click on apply, that will change the label for Atlas Obscura. And notice right here on our little drop down, there's a clue right there to what color that is. And if we scroll through our emails, we'll see that now our previously gray Atlas Obscura label is now this nice gold color with a black print on it. It really stands out. Now, I'm going to flip over real quick to my personal email just to give you an idea of how many different colors you can have and how many different labels and what it looks like once you actually start creating a lot of labels. So when I go into my personal email, you notice that I have a variety of labels here. Here's a green one, an orange one, and I have a whole set of different labels under each of these different categories, and I have even more labels under my other inboxes. On the side here, it lists all my labels that I have, and you notice I have so many that I have to scroll actually down the page. But you also notice I can put subfolders inside a folder. So there's a radio, I'm an amateur radio operator, and there's a radio brand called L-Craft, and they make a couple different models. So even though I want to tag each of them as they come in, I've chosen to put them as subfolders under the L-Craft label, so I can simply close this and only see L-Craft if I want to, or I can open it up and see all the different models of the radio in there. So you can get very creative with this. For example, on my work email, I have my colleague Eric in bright red, so he'll show up. And of course, I'm in the wrong email, so that won't work because I'm not in my proper email. We're not going to show you my home email, my work email right now because I'm not sure what's there. So let's flip back over to the account where I do know what's there, our test account, and let's take a look at a couple more things. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we can see it here. Now, if I want to take and archive an email, what it simply does is it goes into the inbox and it removes the inbox label. So if I have an email that I'm reading, one of my choices at the top is to archive it. Once I archive it, it will remove this inbox label from there. So this Chinese lunch will no longer be in my inbox. It'll just be in my archive. Now, archive sounds like a very ominous word, like we're going to do the Indiana Jones and we're going to put it into the giant warehouse with the crates that go on forever and ever. For those of you who are too young, you have to go watch Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom so you can find out about that giant archive. But archiving is nothing that dramatic in Gmail. And again, we can take any label on or off by simply clicking on the X. I can remove that SP label from that. I can remove the inbox label. And if I remove the inbox label, you notice we went down from our original 9 or 10 down to 8 now because we've removed that label from there. So again, labels are something you can remove. You can have multiple labels on something. So let's go into our Atlas Obscura section again, and you notice I can take my inbox label off any of these and it'll still say in my Atlas Obscura box. So let's just do that with one of these messages. Let's click on one. Notice I have 8 current main inbox and I have 32 unread messages. These are unread messages in my Atlas Obscura. So I'm going to go in here and remove the inbox label from that, and that message now only has an Atlas Obscura label on it. And if I go down in here further into Atlas Obscura messages, you'll see that as I click on each one and read it, my number will keep decreasing. And if I take off the inbox labels, it'll keep decreasing the number of items that are unread in my inbox. So that's the whole idea. That's how you do labeling. And that's pretty much the details. Now, on the web page, the resource page, again, that's at tiny.cc/sparcc.org. There's a section on that page showing you exactly the steps that I've just went through in a nice handout. So you can open this handout up and you can share this with your friends and family and students. And it just talks and walks you through the whole step-by-step with little screenshots and the information I just went through right now. So again, if you're more of a reading type person as opposed to a watching person, that's available for you to use. Okay, so now we've created some labels. We've changed the color of some labels. Matter of fact, I can always go back in and change the color again if I want to. And it automatically changes all those Atlas Obscura labels to a blue color. So I can choose to change the colors anytime I want. But what happens if I have a label that I want to get rid of? Well, there's a couple ways I can do it. The easiest way probably though is to go into our settings. So we're going to go into settings here for a moment. And if you're not familiar with going into the settings, on the far right is a little gear. And when you click on the gear, it gives you a drop-down menu. And on the drop-down menu, there's a choice called settings. So we've went into settings and then settings, and that brings us to our settings screen. Now, a word of warning, some of these settings can cause major catastrophes with your email. So I'm going to suggest you don't touch some of these, but you notice across the top, each blue tab has a menu that goes with it. We'll talk about the ones that you're probably going to want to work with and the ones you're probably going to want to ignore. But for right now, we're going to click on the labels. And you'll notice real quick on the labels, it shows all the labels that are here, and it shows us things we can do with the labels. Now you notice down here at the bottom, our Atlas Obscura label has the ability for us to either edit it, we could change the way it's spelled, we could change different things on it, or we could remove it. If we remove it, it'll be gone, and we will no longer have that label. You notice up here, we also have some labels that we have no ability to remove. Notice we can't remove these. We can't do anything except for hide some of them if we want to, but we can't even hide our inbox, for example. So these labels are things that you are forced to always maintain with Google Apps Gmail. If you're using the category email box, it'll show up categories here also, but you might not be seeing those. But if you do want to do things like, let's say I'm not interested in seeing my trash, I can simply click on the show button or the hide button, and it'll choose whether I'm seeing my trash or not seeing my trash. Now, we can go through and add labels here if we wanted to, also by clicking on a create new label, but I usually find it just easier to create a new label by going through and using the tool under filtering to do it at the same time. So that's searching, filtering, and labeling our emails. Let's look at a couple of other settings while we're in here. First, we're going to click on the General tab. In the General tab, there's some things that you might want to do that I might want to do. These are preferences. Some of them are very minor preferences. Some of them have very large implications. So please be careful before you change these to make sure you know what it means. First thing I'm going to do is something that you can all do it. You don't have to worry about it at all. That's the stars. And what are stars? Stars are things we can simply attach to messages. So let me just flip real quick to my inbox here, and I'll show you that we can come down here, and just to the left of an email message, there's a little blank spot, and when we click on that, it puts a star there. And if we click on it, if we pause and then click on it again, it removes the star. If we keep clicking, it'll show us multiple colored stars. And you notice that I can cycle through a variety of stars here. The way I can choose how many stars I want available to me is in the settings menu. So right here in the settings menu, I can say I want only 1 star, or I want 4 stars, or I want all the stars, or you know what? I want all the stars, but I don't want the purple ones. So I can simply take my mouse, click on it, and drag all the purple ones out of there so I no longer have the purple ones. But they cycle through in this order. And so if you want to change the order, you can also drag them from left to right. So if I want the first star to come up as green, I can do that and have it come up green. And when I go into my email, it would be changed based on that. So let's say all stars for right now. That's a setting that's very safe to make without worrying about anything else. The next one is something that some people like, some people don't. I like keyboard shortcuts. Just please be aware that if you turn the keyboard shortcuts on and you're not paying attention and you just randomly press a key while you're reading your email, you might do something like forward it, delete it, etc. So if you do have keyboard shortcuts on, make sure you either keep your hands off the keyboard or know what keys to press when you're using. And I find some keyboard shortcuts very, very helpful. There's a very easy way to see all the keyboard shortcuts. If you go over to the help section, you can see the keyboard shortcuts from there for all of the items just by typing in keyboard shortcuts here. You can also choose to press the question mark, in other words, shift, and then press the question mark, and it'll bring up the window showing you all the keyboard shortcuts for you very quickly. Right below here, you can see that there's some keyboard shortcuts that are enabled and some that are disabled, and you can disable specific ones. We'll talk a little bit more about working with individual ones in a moment. But again, the same thing works in all the Google apps. So if you're in Docs, Sheets, Forms, Slides, email, you can simply use Shift ? And it pops up all the keyboard shortcuts for you. So that's something you can turn on. Another thing you might want to do is people always wonder, well, how do I change my picture? This is where you can come in and click on change your picture. Click on that. You can either upload a picture, you can select a picture from somewhere, or you can choose to have no picture at all. So if I want to choose a different picture, I can just choose a different file that I might have on my computer, and I could choose a picture that I would want to use with that. I'm not seeing any pictures that I would necessarily like to use right now, but let's just say I wanted to use one. I can simply pick it, and it's going to show me what it looks like, and that's probably not going to be a picture that I want. So I'm just going to hit the cancel button and keep the picture I have right now. I can also choose to show who can see the picture and who cannot. If I choose visible only to the people I chat with, then that limits it. If I choose visible by anyone, anytime I send an email, they will see my little picture that goes along with it. One last thing I want to cover on this page, and that's the signature. If you want to put a signature in with maybe your email and your phone number, this is the place you do it, right here under signature. If you don't want a signature, you can turn it off. And if you have a signature, you can toggle it back on and off depending on what you want to do. I usually have a signature. I just don't have one on this account because it's a test account. And that's where you put your signature in. If you want to find out more about signatures, click on the little blue help over here, and it'll tell you more about using and creating a Gmail signature. I'm not going to talk about the vacation responder because I don't believe in them, but we need to scroll to the bottom. Anytime you make any changes on this page, you need to click on the Save Changes. That was just an editorial comment. If you do like to use the vacation responder, you can find out more about it, but I just don't tend to use it a lot. So I'm going to click on Save Changes. If I don't do that, it's not going to save those changes I made. And I know you get sort of spoiled with Google Apps. You forget to save changes. So we've saved all those changes. I'm going to go back into our settings again, and we're going to look at a couple other tabs. We've already looked at the general and the labels. The next one is where we choose what type of inbox we want. We're going to not really talk about that now. That's saved for another day. Accounts, we're not going to worry about that right now, but if you wanted to use multiple accounts or feed multiple accounts into one, this is the place you could do it. We can also set up filters and block addresses. So if there's someone we don't want, we can use our same filtering characteristics before to apply them and block something. But you'll notice right here that I can come in to my filter that I created for Atlas Obscura, where it says when it matches this, I wanted to apply this label. I can come over here and I can click on edit, and it pops open the same box that I had before when I originally created my message to work with it. So again, if I click on the edit, it comes up, says it has the words Atlas Obscura in it. I can continue. I can make any changes I want. So this is where I can edit my filters right here. I can also delete one if I don't want it any longer. So this SP one, I don't want it anymore. I'm going to hit delete. And it's going to say you really want to delete the filter, and now there's no SP filter available. The label stays there on the side, but will no longer have the filter automatically working. So again, that doesn't remove the label. That just removes the filtering process. The next tab over is for forwarding an email. And if you want to use this, again, you have to ask permission. So once you click on the add forwarding email address, when you choose who you want to send it to, it's going to send you a verification notice when they accept your access. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is we're going to skip over chat, and we're going to skip over a couple things. I want to just talk very briefly about themes. I'm usually not a very big person on themes. I'm usually, like right now, you notice I had like the minimal theme here. There is one good reason, though, to set themes on your Gmail. If you have multiple accounts, it's a great way to know just at a glance which account you're in. So I'm going to click real quick here on my personal email, and you'll see I have a wood grain background. So I know that if I see the wood grain background, I'm in my personal email. If I click on this purple one down here, I would be in my work email. If I click on the white one, it's again another work email that I use and it has a white background. So I set each of my backgrounds themes to let me know when I'm on a specific thing. Then I can click on the set themes button. I can pick any of these pictures I want. I usually don't go for pictures. I usually go for colors. We'll just choose this yellow mustard color for background, but that is pretty intense. I think we might choose a little more subtle background here. We'll try this green. Okay, we'll go with green for today. And we simply have to click on save. You can also add your own custom photos if you'd like. Some of these background themes are also interactive. In other words, they will change over time. So if you're using the desktop, some days you'll come in, there might be a coffee cup sitting on it. There may be a stain. There may be a post-it note left on there. So some of them are dynamic themes, and they change every day. And they can be fun, but my main reason for using themes is the ability to distinguish between my different accounts very quickly when I see the counts. Let's take a look at one last item here under our menu settings, and that is called Labs. Our Lab section has something that Google calls some crazy experimental stuff. And I think that's pretty well describes the name of it. Labs are ideas that someone at Google had, some engineer somewhere said, hey, wouldn't it be nice in email if we could do X, Y, and Z? Well, they create this crazy experimental stuff, and it's put under Google Mail Labs. And the thing about labs are created sometimes as beta products, and labs can go away. So let's say a lab is not really working out, or it's no longer needed because some other changes have taken place. The lab can completely go away. So you notice at the top here, there's a warning. Labs may change, break, or disappear at any time. So you're not guaranteed the lab is going to be there. But what happens with most good labs, and of course the ones I choose are going to be good labs, is that they eventually become part of the full general settings. So for example, if I click back on general again here, originally if you wanted to turn on all the stars, you had to go into the labs, and there was one called All Stars. And when you would enable that All Stars, all of the stars would show up. But it made the big time. It got up into the general settings now. It's no longer a lab. So it sort of grew up and moved in with the big boys. So on the labs, you can search for things. So let's say you want to find out something about photos. You can search, and notice it jumped to labs that have to do with photos. Pretty neat, huh? Well, the way it arranges the labs is in alphabetical order, but what it does is it first shows you the enabled labs, the ones you've enabled by clicking on the little dot, and then it shows you the available labs, the other ones you have not chosen. So you notice if I scroll down, there's quite a few other ones that I have not chosen. The number of labs has actually decreased over the year because a lot of these things have become mainstream. The ones I can think of off the top of my head are the canned responses. Oh, I forgot to show you one under general, which I'll go back and show you in a moment. The All Stars, and one of the ones that made it to the big league fairly recently that was previously a lab is one that I forgot to mention under general, and I find it very useful, and that is the one that's the undo send. And you might wonder, well, how do you undo a send? What it actually does is when you enable undo send message, it actually waits 10 seconds before it ships it out. So as soon as you click the send button, it doesn't go out immediately. It waits 10 seconds. And it's remarkable how fast your mind can catch an accident or something you put in by accident or something you misspelled or something you changed or something you forgot to include like an attachment. And if you click the undo button, it will quickly undo. So let me just demonstrate that real quick. I'm going to click on the compose button here. I'm going to create a message, and I'm going to send it to myself, another account. We're going to hit test. Now watch what happens when I click send. I'm going to get a little message up here that says, hey, what do you want to do? And I'm going to wait, and I'm going to click undo before the 10 seconds, and it says, hey, we did not send the message. It is still a draft message. So I can go in here and make any changes I want to. I can click on send again. And again, if I wanted to click on undo, it would stop it from sending, and I can make changes. If I don't ever send it and just close it, it'll stay in my drafts until I discard it. So again, the undo is sort of a neat feature. It's one of the settings that you have available to you. So let's go jump back into settings again. I'll show you where that was at. That was under general, and it was here under undo send. And while we're here, I'm going to show you the other thing I forgot to mention. And that is a feature that I like a lot. Some people don't really care for it a lot, but I really like it. And that is what happens after you're done reading an email. And that is to have it auto advance to the next email. So we'll show you that here in a moment when I remember where it's hidden at. So let's go back to our labs because I think it's actually hiding over there. And it is. It hasn't made the big time yet. I know that this is going to be a contender at some point in time. What this basically does is if you turn auto advance on, enable it. Remember again, whenever you choose any of the labs, you have to come down here and save the changes that you made. So now that I've enabled auto advance, here's the way it works. When I'm reading my email, let's say I read this email. If I have auto advance turned off, if I would come up here and simply delete my email, send it to the trash, it would normally return me to the inbox. But because I have auto advance on, when I click on the trash can, it will just move to the next message. And because I have keyboard shortcuts on, if I want to, I can simply use the J key to move to the next message, and I can keep moving through. And if I want to back up, I can use the K key. So again, if you like to have the keyboard shortcuts on, J moves you forward to the next message, K moves you back to the previous message. And if you get to the top, it pops you back into your inbox. So again, if you want the auto advance tool on, so when you read an email and you delete it, it will simply move you to the next tool. That is a lab. So we need to go back in our settings here again, jump over to labs, and just look for the one called auto advance. Go ahead and turn it on. By the way, there's a little description how it works here. The other ones I like a lot are the canned responses. Canned responses allow you to create special responses that you can pick from your email, and you can use these canned responses to send things out. Now, Eric and I both have a canned response in our regular accounts, which I'm not going to show you right now because it's my regular account. But basically, it basically says directions to our office. It gives the street address. It tells you what parking lot to park in, what door to enter the building from, and how to get to our offices. Because quite often we get that same thing we want to say, or during the time when we're doing the conference, a lot of times we get people with the same questions, and it's very easy for us to simply go in and grab a canned response and have it go into the email and go back out again. So canned responses are great. You can enable it here, and once you enable it, you can create your own specialized canned responses. I also have turned on the custom keyboard shortcuts. I like to have a key that I like to mark a message as unread, and the keystroke combination to do that in the regular keystrokes is kind of complicated. So I simply have remapped the U key to unread, or to change something from read to unread. So if something is read right here and I go back to it again, you'll see that it's read. And if I wanted to change it back, I could come up here and I could click on this, and I could go up to the more, and I could mark it as unread. Well, I simply have the little U key programmed in my regular account, so if I hit that key, it will turn the message back from read into unread without having to go through this whole set of hoops. So you can set up custom keyboard shortcuts. Again, that's in our labs under custom keyboard shortcuts. Now, those are the only ones I'm currently have turned on for this account. There's some other ones that you might find useful. The Google Calendar gadget is pretty neat because it sits down at the bottom of your email, so you can see calendar things that are coming up. I used to use the multiple inboxes, but with the new way that email is sorted with the choices of filters for different types of inboxes. So for example, in my inbox, I have the social, the updates, the forms, etc. I don't really need that type of multiple that multiple email boxes that I used to use before, and I think that may go the wayside. It's still there, but I'm not sure how long it'll be with us. So there's some other ones down here that you can look through and see if there's anything you like. A lot of people like the quote selected text. This simply allows you to select the text by using your mouse to highlight it, and then you can put that you can have that quoted selected text in the message so it stands out so people can see it. So that's it for labs that I'm going to talk about. So that pretty much ties up all the ends of our webinar for today. So we're actually done a little bit early. Just want to talk about a couple of things before we finish up and let you go. So again, when we go back to our resource page, when you're all done, please consider filling out the evaluation form. That's very helpful for Eric and I. We get evaluation forms that give us feedback on each of our sessions. Also, if you're interested in the credit or the continuing education certificate, please feel free to click on the session quiz link and take the quiz. And again, if you pass the quiz, it should send you an email with 1 hour of continuing education as a PDF that you need to print out yourself. If for some reason it does not appear within a day or so, check your spam folder to make sure it didn't go in your spam folder. And if it's much longer than that, you can always feel free to drop us an email and saying, hey, I didn't get my certificate. Occasionally we have it automated and it runs with a couple add-ons, and sometimes they just decide that they're going to take a rest and we have to go in and give them a good kick to get them going again. Upcoming professional development webinars, we have 3 that are currently scheduled. Let me get to the schedule here. I'm going to be doing one on supercharging sheets with add-ons coming up, and Eric has another one scheduled, but I don't see it on the list here. So you have to check our list. And again, you may want to sign up for our webinar, for our free Sparklines newsletter that will allow you to receive this information when it comes. So again, thank you very much for watching today's webinar. Please feel free to share this with friends. We currently have 38. This will be the 38th recorded training. And you'll see that we have a wide variety of them available. And we found out something else. We originally designed these for teachers. We found out that some teachers are actually using these to flip their classroom a little bit. So let's say they wanted to do a project on spreadsheets with maybe the senior class students, and they should have already learned about spreadsheets, but they're not really sure whether they have. So instead of spending the time going over the basics of spreadsheets, they might just say, over the next week, I need you to go into Spreadsheets 101, watch the webinar, generate the certificate, bring it in, and show me the certificate. That way I know that everyone in the class is at the starting point, so I don't have to start out with this is a cell, this is a row, this is a column. So please feel free to use the webinars in any way you'd like. And again, thank you very much for attending today's webinar, and please look for us in the future. Good night.